Arya couldn't believe his eyes. The war that had consumed his planet for 50 years longer than his 14 years of life was ending in mere hours as human warships cut through Vakar's atmosphere. From a crack in his underground bunker ceiling, he watched United Earth Defense Force vessels descend with precision. The ships deployed combat mechs and weapon systems beyond anything the TAC had ever developed. Each human strike eliminated Morlock separatist positions that had stood immovable for decades. The thin, feathered boy pressed his face closer to the opening. His golden eyes widened, vestigial wings twitching with nervous energy. He'd survived alone for months in these ruins of Naram, once the proud capital of his people. Now he watched alien humans accomplish in hours what his species couldn't achieve in half a century. A flash of blue-white energy erupted from a human vessel, vaporizing a Morlock weapon's emplacement. The sound reached Arya seconds later, not the familiar thunder of tac-tac artillery, but a high-pitched whine followed by silence. Just silence. The constant background of war that had accompanied every moment of Arya's life paused for the first time he could remember. Above, Captain Jesse Burns directed the UEDF Special Intervention Unit's ground assault. The 35-year-old veteran maintained communication with Admiral Helena Ross aboard the flagship Deterrent in orbit. Their operation unfolded with mechanical precision targeting Warlord Krex's forces while minimizing civilian casualties. Alpha Team, converge on Grid Section 17. Intelligence confirms Krex's command bunker location, Burns instructed through his neural interface. His combat armor adjusted to the planet's gravity as he led his squad toward the Morlock leadership compound. The humans had discovered the tac civilization only 3 months earlier during deep space exploration. After establishing first contact and learning of the devastating civil war, the United Earth Council voted unanimously for humanitarian intervention. What they didn't tell the tac was how outmatched the Morlock would be. Human combat AI systems calculated targeting solutions in nanoseconds. Plasma-based weapons cut through Morlock defenses like they were paper. Quantum targeting capabilities allowed strikes accurate to the millimeter, taking out military targets while leaving civilian structures untouched. Arya counted 4 hours since the first human ships appeared. In that time, the Morlock's primary command centers had been neutralized, their supply lines severed, and according to emergency broadcasts, Warlord Krex himself captured by Captain Burns' team in an 18-minute operation. The boy struggled to process this reality. His family, parents, siblings, cousins all lost to a conflict these humans were resolving in less than a day. Where tac soldiers fought and died for meters of territory over years, humans cleared entire districts in minutes. Robotic medical units deployed alongside combat forces, treating injured civilians with technology that seemed magical to Arya. Wounds that would have been fatal under tac care were stabilized instantly. A sudden explosion rocked Arya's bunker, a precision strike against a hidden Morlock ammunition depot nearby. The ceiling groaned. Concrete and rebar gave way. Arya scrambled backward, but not fast enough. Debris crashed down, pinning his left leg and wing. Pain shot through his body. He tried to call out, but dust filled his lungs. As darkness edged his vision, Arya heard the mechanical whir of approaching human equipment. The war that defined his existence was ending, but his real encounter with humanity was just beginning. Arya's consciousness flickered between darkness and light. The weight on his chest made each breath a struggle, and the searing pain in his leg kept him from fully slipping away. Dust particles swirled in the thin beam of light still penetrating the collapsed ceiling. He tried to call out, but only produced a weak cough that sent fresh waves of agony through his pinned body. The sound of approaching machinery cut through his haze of pain. Not the familiar clank of Morlock combat walkers, but something smoother, more precise. The rubble above him shifted slightly. Small cascades of concrete dust filtered down. I'm detecting life signs. Tac-tac juvenile. Approximately 14 standard years, a calm human voice announced from somewhere above. Stable but with significant trauma to lower left limb and appendicular wing structure. A grinding noise followed as debris was methodically moved aside. Arya blinked as a larger shaft of light suddenly illuminated his prison. The silhouette of a human in combat armor appeared at the opening, backlit by Vakar's amber sky. Hold position. I'm coming down. The voice was authoritative yet controlled. Captain Burns descended into the bunker with practiced efficiency, his armor's servos humming quietly as he navigated the unstable environment. His helmet's tactical display highlighted Arya's biosigns in real time. Burns knelt beside the trapped Tac-tac youth, activating specialized scanning equipment that projected a three-dimensional model of the debris pinning Arya. Precision cutters and grav manipulators, Burns ordered through his neural interface. Priority medical extraction. Within seconds, specialized equipment was lowered into the confined space. Burns placed a stabilizing field generator next to Arya, creating a protective bubble that would prevent further collapse during extraction. Don't worry, kid. We're getting you out, Burns said, his helmet's translation matrix converting his words into the flowing, musical language of the Tac-tac. Arya's golden eyes widened in surprise at hearing his native tongue from this armored giant. The human soldiers worked with mechanical precision, cutting through rebar and concrete with tools that sliced through the materials without heat or vibration. A hovering gravity manipulator lifted the heaviest pieces away from Arya's crushed leg and wing. When the final piece of debris was removed, Arya expected excruciating pain. Instead, he felt only a dull pressure as Captain Burns carefully assessed his injuries. Lieutenant Rodriguez, medical support required. Multiple fractures, tissue damage to left leg and wing structure, Burns transmitted, maintaining eye contact with Arya through his visor. The captain removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face with steel-gray eyes. Deep lines marked his features, testament to years of combat across distant worlds. My name is Jesse Burns, United Earth Defense Force. You're safe now, he said, his translation device now attached to his armor collar. He offered a small container of water with a drinking tube adapted for Tac-tac facial structure. Small sips. Arya drank cautiously, the cool liquid soothing his dust-coated throat. Lieutenant Rodriguez arrived moments later, carrying a compact medical unit. The combat medic's movements were efficient but gentle as he assessed Arya's condition. Multiple compound fractures to the tibial analog, Captain, Rodriguez reported, scanning the injured wing. Significant damage to the wing membrane and supporting structure, but salvageable with regenerative treatment. Rodriguez administered a clear solution through a painless pressure injector. Almost immediately, the sharp edges of Arya's pain dulled to a manageable ache. That's a species-appropriate analgesic, Rodriguez explained to Arya. It won't make you drowsy, but it will manage the pain while I work. The medic unfolded his portable treatment unit, revealing an array of medical technology unlike anything Arya had ever seen. Rodriguez applied a translucent gel to the injured areas that seemed to sink into Arya's skin, followed by a device that emitted pulses of blue light. Nanite-assisted bone knitting with accelerated tissue regeneration, Rodriguez explained, noticing Arya's fascination. On Earth, we'd have you walking in a day. For your physiology, maybe two. Captain Burns remained beside Arya, periodically receiving updates through his neural implant. The bunker trembled as distant precision strikes continued. Morlach artillery nest neutralized in Sector 23, Burns murmured, then noticed Arya's worried expression. Those explosions you hear are targeted strikes. No civilian areas are being engaged. Rodriguez continued working methodically, applying various treatments to Arya's injuries. I was a doctor before joining the UEDF, he said conversationally as he worked. specialized in xenophysiology. Your wing structure is fascinating vestigial but with complex neural pathways that suggest they were once functional in your evolutionary past. As Rodriguez finished the initial treatment, Burns offered Arya a ration pack specially formulated for tac-tac biology. "How did you know what we could eat?" Arya asked, speaking for the first time. Burns smiled slightly. "We spent months studying your world before we arrived. We don't intervene without understanding." When Arya was stabilized, Burns carefully lifted him onto a hovering medical transport. The sensation of weightlessness surprised Arya as they ascended through the bunker opening to the surface. Narrated, what remained of it spread before them. Human vessels maintained precise positions overhead while ground forces secured the area. In the central plaza, a massive structure had appeared where nothing had stood, that Morninga Field Hospital constructed in less than an hour. "That's where we're heading," Burns explained as they moved through the rubble-strewn streets. "You'll receive full treatment there." Arya watched with wide eyes as they approached the hospital. Through its transparent sections, he could see hundreds of his people receiving care. For the first time since the pain had started, Arya felt something unexpected: hope. 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Arya flexed his left leg, marveling at the smooth movement. The compound fractures had healed completely, leaving no sign of injury. His once-damaged wing now extended fully, the translucent membrane catching the afternoon light filtering through the window of his quarters. "Medical scan complete," announced the automated health monitor installed in his living space. "All biological parameters within optimal range. Recovery at 100%. Arya stood by the viewport overlooking what remained of Naram's governmental district. The view had transformed daily since his rescue from the collapsed bunker. Where rubble and destruction once dominated, orderly construction now progressed at a pace that still astonished him. Modular structures rose from cleared foundations, each component locked precisely into place by construction drones that worked without pause. A chime at his door preceded Captain Burns' arrival. The human officer no longer wore full combat armor, instead dressed in the dark blue utility uniform of UEDF command personnel. "Ready for today's briefing?" Burns asked, his translation device now a small disc attached to his collar rather than the bulkier unit he'd initially used. "Yes, Captain," Arya replied, smoothing his new clothing practical garments provided by the human logistics teams. They walked together through the forward operating base established in what had once been Naram's central administrative complex. Tac-tac civilians moved purposefully alongside human personnel, many wearing identification badges that designated them as reconstruction assistants. Arya recognized several faces from his old neighborhood, now employed helping catalog and distribute supplies. "The agricultural implementation team reports the 3rd hydroponic facility is operational," Burns said, gesturing to a holographic display as they entered the command center. "Production capacity now exceeds 40,000 metric tons of basic nutritional crops per month." Arya studied the scrolling production figures. Before the humans arrived, that amount would have taken years to grow in Vakar's war-depleted soil. "General Ramirez wants your perspective on the southeastern district priorities," Burns continued, leading Arya to a circular planning table where several officers studied a 3-dimensional map of the region. Major General Victor Ramirez looked up as they approached. The general's weathered face remained impassive, but his eyes carried a hint of warmth as he nodded to Arya. "Our young liaison arrives," Ramirez said. "Your input has proven valuable, Arya. The cultural context you provided helped us avoid several potential misunderstandings during yesterday's clearing operation." Arya stood straighter. 3 weeks ago, he'd been trapped alone in a bunker, certain of death. Now he advised human military commanders who valued his opinion. The reality of this transformation still struck him at unexpected moments. The planning session lasted 2 hours, during which Arya watched humans make decisions about reconstruction priorities with methodical efficiency. They discussed resource allocation, security concerns, and cultural preservation with equal consideration, weighing factors that TAC leadership had long ago abandoned in favor of military objectives. After the meeting, Burns guided Arya toward a newly constructed section of the base. "I want to show you something," the captain said. "Thomas Ross has completed the central communications hub." They entered a gleaming facility that hummed with activity. Engineer specialist Thomas Ross, a younger version of Admiral Ross with the same sharp eyes and focused demeanor, greeted them at the entrance. "Perfect timing," Ross said, leading them toward a central control station. "We're initializing the planetary network in 5 minutes." Arya observed the compact equipment with fascination. "This will connect the entire planet. Our communication systems required massive transmission towers, and most were destroyed decades ago." Ross smiled. "This operates on entirely different principles. We use quantum entanglement for instantaneous transmission, regardless of distance." He pointed to a device no larger than Arya's hand. Each paired unit shares quantum-locked particles. When one particle's state changes, its partner changes simultaneously, no matter how far apart they are. "Our theoretical physicists proposed similar technology," Arya said, "but they estimated we were centuries from implementation." "We had our own theoretical hurdles," Ross replied, making adjustments to a control panel. The breakthrough came during the Centauri conflict, about 30 Earth years ago. Military necessity accelerated development. A countdown appeared on the main display. When it reached 0, Ross activated the system. Status indicators across the facility shifted from amber to green. A moment later, incoming signals began registering from across Vakar's surface. "Communications restored planet-wide," Ross announced. "First time in 30 years, correct?" Arya nodded, watching as forgotten transmission protocols reactivated across the display. Messages began flowing between settlements that had been isolated for generations. The implications were staggering. Later that afternoon, Sergeant William Cooper met Arya outside the communications hub. The stocky, brown-haired soldier had been assigned as Arya's guardian shortly after his recovery, and their daily routine had quickly become the stable center of Arya's new life. "How's the leg today?" Cooper asked as they walked toward the training field where displaced TAC youth gathered for education sessions. "Perfect," Arya replied in careful English. "No pain." Cooper nodded approvingly. "Your pronunciation's getting better. Want to practice more on the way to the mess hall?" Their English lessons had become something Arya looked forward to each day. Cooper's patient instruction contrasted sharply with the gruff sergeant's battlefield demeanor Arya occasionally glimpsed during security operations. "Family," Cooper said, activating a small holographic projector that displayed an image of a woman with dark hair and 4 children ranging from toddler to teenager. "This is my wife Maria and our kids back in New Montana." Arya studied the image. "Your youngest looks like you." Cooper laughed. "Poor kid." Maria says the same thing. His expression grew more serious. "They're why I do this." So families, human or otherwise, can live without constant fear. The casual revelation struck Arya profoundly. Despite their overwhelming military power, these humans spoke of family, of peace, of compassion. It contradicted everything the initial terror of witnessing their weapon systems had suggested. The following day, Captain Burns invited Arya to witness a significant event. "Warlord Krex's tribunal begins this morning," he explained as they traveled by ground transport to the restored Grand Assembly Hall. "I thought you should see how we handle justice." The magnificent hall had been meticulously repaired. Where artillery shells had once blasted holes in the ancient stone walls, seamless reconstruction now preserved the original architectural integrity while incorporating subtle security enhancements. Arya recognized the nearly invisible force field generators positioned at strategic intervals technology he'd learned about during his time with the humans. Inside, rows of seats accommodated hundreds of tac civilians and officials. A raised platform at the front held a formal judicial bench where Colonel James Richardson, the Judge Advocate General, presided in formal legal attire. Warlord Krex entered flanked by human security personnel. The Ansafird Morlach leader appeared diminished without his battle armor, wearing simple prison garments. His green-gray scales seemed dull under the assembly hall lighting, but his eyes remained defiant. Burns leaned close to Arya. "This is not an execution or revenge. It's a legal proceeding to establish facts and determine appropriate consequences." For hours, Arya watched as evidence of Krex's war crimes appeared in holographic detail. Witnesses testified about atrocities committed under his command, their testimonies translated instantaneously for all to understand. Most striking to Arya was that Krex himself was permitted to speak, to present his own version of events, to question witnesses through appointed representation. During a recess, Burns introduced Arya to Admiral Helena Ross, who had arrived planetside for the first time. The Admiral's presence commanded a tensioner uniform adorned with commendations Arya couldn't identify, her bearing authoritative yet approachable. "You must be Arya," she said. "Captain Burns speaks highly of your assistance." Later that day, Burns allowed Arya to attend a private meeting between Admiral Ross and newly appointed TAC leaders, including Provisional Governor Teller. The elderly TAC approached the humans with visible caution, his traditional leadership robes hanging loosely on his frame after years of food shortages. Admiral Ross stood before the assembled TAC officials. "The United Earth Council has voted unanimously to offer your people formal protected status and technological assistance for a minimum of 15 Earth years," she announced. "Our anthropologists have determined that, without intervention, your civilization faces potential collapse within a decade due to environmental and societal damage from the prolonged conflict." Governor Teller's feathers ruffled slightly, a sign of skepticism Arya recognized immediately. Why would humans expend such resources on an alien species with nothing to offer in return? Admiral Ross's response was simple but profound. "Humanity once stood where you are now, on the brink of self-destruction. Before we learned that civilization's true measure is not its military might, but its capacity for compassion." The meeting shifted to discussions of educational systems, medical technology transfers, and eventually limited defensive capabilities for the recovering TAC civilization. Arya observed the elder's demeanor gradually transform from suspicion to cautious optimism. Without warning, alarms blared through the assembly hall. Before anyone could react, invisible force fields activated around the chamber. A muffled explosion sounded from an adjacent corridor. "Security breach," announced a calm computerized voice. "Threat contained." UEDF security personnel moved with practiced precision. Through the transparent force field barrier, Arya glimpsed several Morlach extremists being subdued with devices that emitted focused sonic pulses. The attackers collapsed without a single shot fired. "Assassination attempt neutralized," reported a security officer. "All suspects in custody. No casualties." The entire incident lasted less than 40 seconds. Governor Teller stared in astonishment at the seamless response that had prevented what would have been a devastating attack under TAC security protocols. That evening, Burns invited Arya to the command center's observation deck. They stood silently watching as massive orbital platforms descended into Vakar's upper atmosphere. "Atmospheric restoration facilities," Burns explained. 12 in total. They'll accelerate the healing of your planet's ecosystem, reducing centuries of natural recovery to less than a decade. The engineering marvel unfolding above them left Arya speechless. Prefabricated sections locked together with mathematical precision, creating structures that would scrub generations of warfare pollutants from Vakar's air. Burns's communication device chirped. He listened, his expression shifting subtly before turning to Arya. "We've located the final Morlock stronghold in the northern polar region," he said. "The last major pocket of resistance on the planet." Arya absorbed this information, thinking of what it meant for his world's future. "I'll be leading a special operations team to neutralize this threat," Burns continued. "Given your knowledge and the progress you've made these past weeks, I'd like you to accompany us as an observer and cultural liaison." The captain's expression was serious but respectful. "This represents a pivotal moment in your people's history. I think you should witness it firsthand." Arya gazed at the orbital facilities taking shape above them, then back to the human officer who had pulled him from the rubble and shown him a future beyond endless war. "When do we leave?" he asked. "Tonight," Arya answered without hesitation. The transport left the UEDF base at 2200 hours. Arya sat between Captain Burns and Sergeant Cooper as the sleek vessel cut through the night sky toward Vakar's northern polar region. Frost patterns formed on the viewport, crystallizing in complex geometric shapes that reminded Arya of traditional tac-tac art patterns from before the war. 11 other soldiers occupied the cabin, their expressions focused and alert despite the late hour. The atmosphere inside the transport carried none of the tense anticipation Arya remembered from tac-tac military operations. Instead, these humans exhibited a calm efficiency that somehow felt more formidable than any battle frenzy. "Major Reeves," Captain Burns called, gesturing to a tall human with silver-streaked hair and deep-set eyes who sat at the front of the transport. "Our tactical specialist and commander of the 7th Special Tactics Squadron." The major nodded toward Arya. "I've read your intelligence reports. Impressive analytical skills." Lieutenant Rodriguez, a woman with close-cropped black hair and quick, observant eyes, worked at a holographic display near the front of the transport. Her fingers manipulated three-dimensional terrain maps, highlighting approach vectors through the ice fields surrounding the Morlock stronghold. "Thermal cloaking active," she reported. "We're invisible to Morlock scanners." Captain Burns turned to Arya. "I have something for you." He retrieved a container from beneath his seat and opened it to reveal a sleek environmental suit sized perfectly for tac-tac proportions. "This will protect you from polar temperatures. The helmet includes augmented reality displays so you can observe our tactical feed in real time." Arya ran his fingers over the material, lightweight yet substantial. "You created this for me." "Our fabricators designed it based on your physiology scans," Burns explained. "The material adapts to your body temperature and will keep you comfortable even in sub-zero conditions." Sergeant Cooper helped Arya into the suit. The material sealed seamlessly around his body, instantly adjusting to his form. The helmet's display activated, overlaying tactical information across his field of vision without obscuring his natural sight. "How does it feel?" Cooper asked, checking the seals at Arya's wrists. "Like nothing," Arya replied in wonder. "I barely notice it's there." Cooper grinned. "That's how you know it's working right." The transport's interior lighting dimmed as they approached the drop zone, a ridge overlooking the Morlock fortress. Through the viewport, Arya glimpsed the massive structure carved into a glacier, reinforced with salvaged industrial metals that created an imposing silhouette against the snow. Major Reeves activated a central holographic projector that displayed the fortress in perfect detail. Intelligence from orbital scans confirms Commander Vrex has gathered approximately 3,000 Morlock loyalists inside. "Our primary concern is this." He highlighted a section deep within the structure. "A stockpile of chemical weapons that could devastate Vakar's recovering atmosphere if deployed." The Major expanded the holographic display, revealing the fortress's interior layout. We'll execute in 3 phases. First, Lieutenant Rodriguez will lead 4 infiltration teams to disable the power generators. Second, we'll deploy neurological suppressant gas through the ventilation system. Finally, we secure the chemical weapons. The transport touched down silently on the ridge. Snow swirled around the vessel as the team disembarked and established a forward observation post. Arya stood beside Captain Burns, watching through hyport optics as Lieutenant Rodriguez and her infiltration teams prepared for deployment. "Those devices on their backs," Arya whispered. "What are they?" "Gravity manipulation harnesses," Burns explained. "They'll cross the ice field without leaving footprints or triggering pressure sensors." Arya watched in fascination as the infiltration teams activated their harnesses and moved across the treacherous terrain. Their bodies seemed to float just millimeters above the surface, advancing toward the fortress with silent precision. The display in Arya's helmet tracked their progress, marking their positions with green indicators against the blue-white landscape. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system as her team reached the perimeter. Exterior defenses identified, typical Morlock configuration with modifications for extreme cold. "Can you bypass?" Major Reeves asked. "Affirmative. Moving to Phase 1 positions now." Through his tactical feed, Arya observed the teams navigating past defense systems that would have detected even the most skilled TAC infiltrators. When they reached the power generation facility, they deployed devices no larger than grain seeds at key junction points. "EMP devices armed," Rodriguez reported. "Initiating controlled electrical failure in 3, 2, 1. The fortress's exterior lights flickered and died. Emergency lighting activated moments later, casting a dull red glow across the structure. "Power systems neutralized," Rodriguez confirmed. "No alarms triggered." Major Reeves nodded to Captain Burns. "Phase 2. Burns moved to a specialized container and removed what appeared to be a control tablet. He activated the device, and a compartment in the transport opened to reveal rows of tiny mechanical objects. "Infiltrator drones," he explained to Arya. 7 to 2 units, each programmed to map and navigate the ventilation system. The drones launched in perfect formation, their miniature propulsion systems barely audible as they streaked toward the fortress. Arya's display showed their progress as they entered through maintenance ducts and spread throughout the structure. "Mapping complete," Burns announced after several minutes. "Deploying suppressant gas." Inside the fortress, the drones simultaneously released a colorless gas synthesized specifically for Morlock physiology. Arya watched the biometric indicators on his display as sections of the fortress turned from red to green. 94% neutralized, Burns reported. Remaining 6% showing reduced capabilities. Major Reeves stood. "Phase 3. Primary assault team with me. Captain Burns, bring our observer once we've secured the initial entry point." The assault team moved toward the fortress with practiced efficiency. Arya watched as they positioned a device against the northern wall. Instead of an explosion, the wall seemed to shimmer and fold inward, creating a precise opening. "Gravitational compression technology," Burns explained. "It displaces the material rather than destroying it. Silent and controlled." When Burns finally led Arya into the fortress, Sergeant Cooper flanked them as personal security. Inside, Arya witnessed UEDF soldiers securing unconscious Morlock with restraints that deployed automatically around their limbs. "No fatalities," Cooper noted as they passed dozens of neutralized Morlock warriors. "Every one of them will wake up with nothing worse than a headache." Arya thought of previous battles he'd witnessed, where casualties on both sides numbered in the hundreds or thousands. The contrast left him momentarily speechless. They reached a junction where Major Reeves waited with a portion of the assault team. "Command center ahead. Suppressant gas concentration is lower than expected in this section. Burns nodded. Stay behind me, he instructed Arya. As they approached the command center, the tactical feed suddenly flickered with warning indicators. The doors burst open, and a group of Morlock warriors emerged wearing filtration masks. At their center stood Commander Vrex, his towering frame immediately recognizable from intelligence briefings. Humans. Vrex snarled through his mask. You bring a tac-tac child to witness your defeat. The Morlock commander hurled a small device toward them. Sergeant Cooper reacted instantly, shoving Arya behind a structural support beam and shielding him with his body. The device detonated with a concussive blast that sent fragments of metal through the corridor. Cooper grunted in pain as shrapnel tore into his left shoulder, but he maintained his protective position over Arya. Stay down, he ordered through gritted teeth. Captain Burns and Major Reeves engaged the Morlock guards with precision fire from weapons that emitted pulses of concentrated energy, incapacitating their targets without fatal damage. Vrex watched his guards fall one by one, his eyes narrowing in fury and disbelief. With a roar, Vrex smacked his fist against a control panel on his wrist guard. Alarm indicators flashed across Arya's tactical display. Chemical weapons stockpile activation detected, announced the AI system in their communication feeds. Detonation sequence initiated. Estimated time to detonation, 15 minutes. Vrex laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the corridor. You may take this fortress, humans, but Vakar will still burn. Major Reeves immediately activated his communication link. Deterrent, this is Reeves. Request immediate deployment of containment teams to our location. Meanwhile, Captain Burns advanced on Commander Vrex. The Morlock leader drew a serrated blade from his armor and lunged forward with surprising speed for his size. Burns sidestepped the attack with fluid grace, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to anticipate and counter each strike. Arya watched in fascination as Burns systematically dismantled Vrex's defense. Where a tac-tac warrior would have sought to kill quickly, Burns methodically disabled his opponent, targeting pressure points and mobility. Within moments, the feared Morlock commander lay subdued on the floor, disarmed but conscious. The countdown continues, Major Reeves reported, checking a scanner. Detonation system operates on an independent circuit. We can't access it from here. Burns made a rapid assessment. Rodriguez, evacuate all captives and most of our team. Reeves, you and I will take Jackson and Ross to the chemical vault. What about the boy? Cooper asked, still holding his injured shoulder. He goes with the evacuation team, Burns said firmly. Cooper nodded and extended his uninjured arm to Arya. Let's go, kid. Arya looked at the blood seeping through Cooper's uniform, then at Burns preparing to head deeper into the fortress. He made his decision. I'm staying with the captain, he said, ducking away from Cooper's reach and moving toward Burns. Arya, it's too dangerous, Burns protested. I know this fortress design, Arya insisted. I spent years hiding in abandoned Morlock structures. I can help. Burns hesitated, then checked the countdown. We've got 12 minutes, let's move. I know this fortress design, Arya insisted. I spent years hiding in abandoned Morlock structures. I can help. Burns hesitated, then checked the countdown. We've got 12 minutes, let's move. They advanced through the fortress corridors, Arya guiding them through maintenance passages he recognized from years spent surviving in similar structures. The chemical weapons vault loomed before Thema, massive reinforced door with Morlock security symbols pulsing red in the emergency lighting. 9 minutes remaining, the AI announced in their comms. Major Reeves examined the security panel. Standard Morlock encryption, but we don't have time to break it. Arya stepped forward. The ventilation system. These vaults always have independent air circulation. He pointed to a narrow duct near the floor. I can fit through there. Burns shook his head. Too dangerous. The suppressant gas hasn't penetrated that area. There's no other option, Arya replied, already removing his helmet. I'll deactivate it from inside. Before Burns could object further, Arya squeezed into the narrow passage. The cold metal pressed against his skin as he navigated the duct system. His tac-tac physiology evolved for survival in tight spaces served him well now. He emerged into the vault's auxiliary control room. The detonation sequence flashed on the main screen. 7, 42 and counting down. Arya scanned the unfamiliar controls, identifying the main circuit board beneath a security panel. Remembering what his father had taught him about Morlock systems, Arya removed the panel and located the primary power coupling. With careful precision, he disconnected it and rerouted the emergency backup through secondary systems. The countdown froze at 3:17. I've paused it, Arya reported through his suit's communication system. But I can't shut it down completely from here. Burns' voice came through clearly. Hold position, we're coming in. Within minutes, the vault door opened. Burns and Reeves rushed inside, quickly securing the chemical weapons and establishing a stable containment field around the stockpile. Neutralization complete, Major Reeves confirmed. All chemical agents contained and rendered inert. Captain Burns approached Arya, placing a hand on his shoulder. You just saved thousands of lives. 6 months later, Arya stood at the observation window of the educational vessel Prometheus, watching Vakar rotate slowly beneath him. The planet looked nothing like the war-torn world of his childhood. Green patches of restored vegetation spread across continents once scarred by bombardment, and the atmosphere had lost its toxic yellow tinge, returning to a clear blue. Beautiful view, isn't it? Dr. Alina Wright joined him at the window, her tablet displaying his latest language assessment scores. It doesn't look like the same planet, Arya replied in perfect English. Your Mandarin scores are imper Dr. Ive, Dr. Wright noted. You've progressed further in 6 months than most students do in 2 years. Zixi, Arya responded with a slight bow. Thank you. His communication tablet chimed with an incoming transmission. Sergeant Cooper's face appeared on screen, his familiar grin now accompanied by a neatly trimmed beard. Hey kid. How's space school treating you? Arya smiled. Better than hiding in bunkers. How's your shoulder? Cooper rotated his arm demonstratively. Good as new. The medical nanites did their work. He adjusted his camera to show the landscape behind him. Check this out. Remember that valley outside Narem, the one that was nothing but craters. The screen showed a vast field of blue-green crops stretching to the horizon, with tac-tac farmers operating machinery of human design. That's impossible, Arya whispered. Nothing grew there for decades. Genetically optimized crops, Cooper explained. They're pulling twice the yield of pre-war agriculture. Your people aren't going hungry anymore. The conversation continued as Cooper detailed the reconstruction efforts. 12 atmospheric processors had completely reversed the toxic contamination. New cities were rising across the landscape, incorporating both human efficiency and traditional tac-tac architecture. After the call ended, Arya rejoined the other 20 tac-tac students in the ship's central learning hub. They gathered around a holographic display showing the construction of their planet's new capital city. Ilara, a female tac-tac from the southern continent, pointed to a familiar figure in the projection. Isn't that your human, the one who found you? The hologram showed Major Burnchi's recent promotion visible in the new insignia on his uniform, instructing a mixed group of former Morlock and tac-tac recruits in non-lethal peacekeeping techniques. He's not my human, Arya corrected her. But yes, that's Major Burns. We're studying Earth's historical conflicts today, another student said. Their species nearly destroyed themselves multiple times before unifying. Perhaps that's why they understood Doctor, what we need. Dr. Wright initiated the day's lesson, focusing on human diplomatic history. Today, we'll examine how Earth's nations transformed centuries of conflict into their current unified governance structure. This has direct applications for your own provisional government's constitutional development. Arya absorbed every detail, recognizing parallels between Earth's past and Vakar's present. The concepts of separation of powers, civil liberties, and democratic representation had been unimaginable during the 5 decades of Morlock-Tak-Tak conflict. Later that evening, Arya received a message from Admiral Ross herself. The United Earth Council had voted to establish Vakar as the first non-human world with protected developmental status. A ceremony was planned, and Arya had been selected as youth ambassador to deliver an address. He stared at the message, overwhelmed by the responsibility. 6 months ago, he had been hiding in ruins. Now he stood at the center of interspecies diplomacy. The following weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Arya worked with diplomatic coaches to refine his speech while continuing his studies. When the day of the ceremony arrived, Arya traveled to the deterrent for the first time since his initial meeting with Admiral Ross. The flagship's main ceremony hall had been transformed for the occasion. Representatives from all 4 to 7 human colony worlds filled the chamber alongside Tak-Tak officials in newly designed ceremonial attire. At the center, Council Chairwoman Sophia Martinez stood with Provisional Governor Teller at a table bearing the Developmental Accord. Admiral Ross greeted Arya with formal respect. "You've grown taller," she observed. "Human food agrees with me," Arya replied. When his moment came to speak, Arya approached the central podium. Billions of humans and Tak-Tak watched the broadcast across 2 worlds. "6 months ago, I believed I was the last of my family line," he began. "Today, I stand before you as part of something larger, not just a survivor, but a builder." His words flowed with practiced precision as he described the transformation he had witnessed. When he finished, the chamber erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Major Burns approached him. "Admiral Ross has approved a request. How would you like to visit Vakar for 2 weeks? There's something I want to show you." 2 days later, Arya stepped onto Vakar's surface for the first time in 6 months. The air smelled cleaner than he remembered, filled with the scent of new vegetation. Burns drove him through rejuvenated landscapes, eventually stopping at coordinates that seemed hauntingly familiar. Arya stepped out of the vehicle, recognizing the location despite its transformation. "This is where my bunker was," he said quietly. Where ruins had once stood, a memorial park now spread across the land. At its center stood a monument constructed from recovered debris of Arya's collapsed shelter. "It's a memorial to all victims of the war," Burns explained, "including your family." They approached the central monument, where a sophisticated holographic system displayed names and images of those lost during the conflict. Burns activated a specific sequence, and suddenly Arya's family appeared, his parents and siblings captured in light. "How did you? We found security footage in damaged data repositories," Burns said, presenting Arya with a small data crystal. "This contains everything we recovered, moments from your childhood home, before the war reached your region." Arya took the crystal with trembling hands. The memories he thought lost forever, preserved by human thoroughness and compassion. His composure faltered, emotions overwhelming him. Burns placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, allowing him time to process this unexpected gift. When Arya regained his composure, Burns outlined the next part of their visit. "There's someone who wants to meet you. It might be difficult, but I think it's important." They traveled to what Burns identified as the Morlock Separatist Rehabilitation Center. Former combatants worked at various stations, learning vocational skills and receiving psychological treatment. In a workshop dedicated to traditional Tak-Tak craftsmanship, a large figure approached them. Arya immediately recognized Commander Vrex, though the former Morlock leader appeared changed. His aggressive posture permeated with a measured dignity. Vrex stopped before them and performed a formal gesture. Arya had only seen in historical recordings a ceremonial acknowledgement of a life debt in Morlock culture. He presented them with an intricately carved token. "The humans have shown me truth I refuse to see," Vrex said, his voice lacking its former harshness. "Our world grows while we diminished it with war." Burns accepted the token with appropriate formality. "Your skills serve a better purpose now." "There is more," Vrex continued. "Many Morlock fled during the human arrival. 15,000 now live on Kairos." He gestured toward Vakar's small moon, visible as a pale crescent in the daylight sky. "They remain suspicious, isolated from the truth of what happens here." "You believe they can be reached?" Burns asked. "With the right message delivered by the right messengers." Vrex looked meaningfully at Arya. "They should see what has happened here, what is possible." Later that day, Burns contacted Admiral Ross, who quickly authorized a diplomatic mission to Kairos. Preparations began immediately for a team including Burns, Arya, Vrex, and human specialists. At the spaceport, as Arya prepared to board the diplomatic vessel Concordia, Sergeant Cooper sought him out privately. "Got my transfer orders," Cooper said. "Heading back to Earth after 14 months here." He pressed a specialized communication device into Arya's hand. "Quantum entanglement tech. We can stay in contact regardless of distance." "This must have cost you, worth every credit," Cooper interrupted. "There's something else. I've petitioned the Council to let you visit Earth someday. First tac to make the trip." Arya stared at the device, processing the implications. "You do that for me? Kid, after everything we've been through, your family now." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent summons from Major Burns. Intelligence had revealed disturbing developments on Kira's defensive weapons constructed by the colonists and aimed at Vakar. A splinter faction led by Commander Zex, cousin to Warlord Krex, had been spreading propaganda about human mind control. Admiral Ross convened an emergency meeting aboard the Deterrent to reassess the mission. Military officers argued for cancellation, while Burns insisted proceeding was essential. Canceling would only confirm their propaganda, Burns argued. Arya stepped forward with a proposal. "We shouldn't approach the main colony directly. The mining outposts on the far side have less exposure to Zex's influence. We start there, show them evidence of Vakar's transformation." Governor Teller, participating via communication link, supported the strategy but insisted, "No military escort. They must not perceive coercion." After careful deliberation, Admiral Ross approved the adjusted plan with additional safety protocols. A rapid response team would remain on standby in high orbit around Kairos, with a continuous quantum link to the Concordia. As final preparations completed, Arya stood on the observation deck of the Concordia, watching the transformed landscape of his homeworld. Burns joined him, his expression thoughtful. "This mission represents more than diplomatic outreach," Burns said quietly. "It's the final step in securing lasting peace for a world that has known only war for generations." The Concordia lifted off, its engines humming with smooth efficiency as they left Vakar's atmosphere. Through the viewport, Arya watched his homeworld recede, the moon Kairos growing larger as they approached. Unknown to the diplomatic team, Commander Zex received warning of their approach from informants within the provisional government. In his command center, carved into Kairos's rocky surface, the extremist leader began preparations for a response that would test the limits of both human patience and tac reconciliation. The Concordia approached Kairos, its sleek hull reflecting the distant sun's light. Arya stood on the command deck beside Major Burns, watching the cratered lunar surface grow larger on the main view screen. The vessel maintained a non-aggressive approach vector, broadcasting peace signals across all tac frequencies. Commander Vrex adjusted his formal diplomatic attire, a stark contrast to the military uniform he once wore with pride. He studied the telemetry data while preparing his initial communication to the lunar colony. "We should receive a resp doctor. Any moment now," said Dr. Samuel Ross, his fingers dancing across the communication array's interface. Their detection systems would have registered our approach 20 minutes ago. The anticipated response never came. Instead, the Concordia's proximity alarms blared through the command deck. 3 crude but functional missiles launched from a concealed position on Kairos' surface, streaking toward the diplomatic vessel. Major Burns remained calm. Defensive measures only. Deploy localized energy fields. The ship's automated systems responded instantly. Shimmering barriers of energy formed around the Concordia, deflecting the projectiles harmlessly into space. That would be Commander Zex's welcome, Vrex noted grimly. His faction controls the main defensive installations. Burns nodded, his expression unwavering. Implement contingency plan Alpha 7. Adjust course toward mining outpost Rex 7. The Concordia banked smoothly, altering its trajectory toward one of the peripheral settlements where intelligence suggested Zex's influence was weakest. As they approached the mining outpost, a collection of domed structures and extraction equipment embedded in the lunar regolith, an unexpected transmission cut through the tense silence. Unidentified vessel, this is Outpost Coordinator Myra. We are a civilian mining operation. Please do not target our facilities. The voice was female, tense but controlled. Arya stepped forward, recognizing the name immediately. Myra, daughter of Engineer Talon from the western provinces. A pause stretched across the communication channel. Who is this? It's Arya from the Education Center in Naram. We trained together before the Morlach offensive separated our regions. Arya, the tension in Myra's voice subsided slightly. The rumors said you were killed when Naram fell. The rumors were incorrect, Arya responded, exchanging a quick glance with Major Burns. I've come with representatives from the provisional government and our human allies. We seek peaceful dialogue. After tense negotiations, Coordinator Myra granted the diplomatic team permission to dock at an external airlock, away from the main habitat. Major Burns agreed to bring only a minimal security detail himself, a human diplomatic officer named Eliza Wa Doctor, NG Tan, Arya, and Commander Vrex. Dr. Ross remained aboard the Concordia with the medical demonstration equipment. I don't like this, Burns told Arya as they prepared to disembark. But sometimes diplomacy requires calculated risk. The airlock cycled open, revealing Myra and a small contingent of miners. The Tac-Tac colonists appeared malnourished. Their environment suits patched multiple times clear signs of the colony's difficult conditions. Myra, a slender Tac-Tac female with distinctive blue-tinted feathering around her eyes, embraced Arya formally, pressing her forehead briefly against his in the traditional greeting of childhood acquaintances. Follow me, she said, leading them through narrow tunnels carved directly into the lunar rock. We must speak somewhere secure. They arrived at a chamber deep within the mining complex, isolated from the main communication systems. Myra sealed the door behind them, her movements quick and practiced. Commander Zex monitors all official communication channels, she explained, her voice lowered despite their isolation. He controls the food and oxygen distribution systems for the main colony. Those who question his leadership suffer accidents in the low-gravity mining operations. Major Burns removed a data tablet from his secure case, activating it to reveal comprehensive footage of Vakar's transformation. The holographic display illuminated the dim chamber with images of rebuilt cities, thriving fields, and Tac-Tac citizens working alongside humans. What you've been told about the situation on Vakar is deliberately misleading, he explained, passing the tablet to Myra. There is no mind control, no subjugation. The provisional government welcomes all Tac-Tac to return and participate in rebuilding. More miners gathered around, their expressions a mixture of suspicion and hope as they viewed footage of their transformed homeworld. Commander Vrex stepped forward, his massive frame commanding immediate attention. I commanded forces that killed thousands. Vrex admitted, his voice resonating in the chamber. By our traditions, I deserved execution. Instead, I was offered restoration and purpose. The humans possess technology centuries beyond our comprehension, yet they use it primarily to heal rather than harm. Arya noticed movement at the edge of the Gatharinga young Tak miner slipping away while the others remained focused on Vrex's testimony. Something about the miner's furtive movements triggered Arya's suspicion. He followed discreetly, moving through the shadowed corridor. The young miner stopped at a maintenance alcove, withdrawing a hidden communication device. Arya confronted him, stepping into view. "Who are you reporting to?" Arya asked. The miner flinched, nearly dropping the device. "Please, I have no choice. He has my sister in the main colony. If I don't report the human's presence, she'll be expelled without an environment suit." Arya recognized the genuine fear in the young Tak's eyes. "Commander Zex threatened your family. He has informants in every outpost. None of us are free to speak openly." The miner's hand trembled as he held the communication device. "I must send this report or my sister dies." Instead of stopping him, Arya made a decision. "Transmit my message directly to Zex." Arya, the survivor of Naram, challenges Commander Zex to witness the truth with his own eyes under the ancient Tak code of parley without weapons. The miner looked at him with disbelief. "You invoke parley? That hasn't been used since before the war," Arya finished. "But it remains part of our cultural law. Zex cannot refuse without losing all honor and legitimacy as a leader." When Arya returned and informed Major Burns of his unauthorized action, the human officer initially objected. "This wasn't part of our mission parameters," Burns said, his voice low but intense. "You've placed yourself at unnecessary risk." Commander Vrex stepped closer. "The young one's strategy has merit. Zex cannot refuse without undermining his authority, and even in his fanaticism, he adheres to ancient codes. It is why his followers trust him." 2 hours later, their communication system alerted them to an incoming transmission from the main colony. Commander Zex accepted the challenge, but with specific terms. He would meet the delegation at the neutral Shrine of Ancestors, a sacred site on Kairos' southern hemisphere, with equal numbers on both sides, 3 representatives each, no weapons. Major Burns established a secure quantum link with Admiral Ross, requesting guidance. After a brief discussion, the Admiral positioned 2 unmarked stealth vessels in high orbit around Kairos as a precaution, but emphasized that military intervention remained the absolute last resort. "This is your mission, Major," Admiral Ross concluded. "Trust your judgment." The Shrine of Ancestors stood isolated on a barren plain, a simple stone structure built by the first Tak settlers on Kairos. Its weathered surface had survived decades of lunar dust storms and micrometeorite impacts, a testament to the durability of Tak stonework. Commander Zex arrived with 2 heavily scarred Morlach veterans. He towered over them, his facial feathers bearing distinctive red patterns artificially scarred into the flesh Beniatha Morlach tradition signifying battles survived. "The great traitor Vrex," Zex hissed, his eyes narrowing at the sight of his former comrade, "and the human overlord who now controls him like a puppet." Major Burns remained impassive, his hands clasped behind his back. He gave a slight nod to Arya, allowing the young Tak to take the lead as cultural protocol demanded. Arya stepped forward, performing the ritualistic gestures of parley, extending his hands, palms up, then touching his throat to symbolize the vulnerability of truthful speech. "I was there when the humans first arrived," Arya began, his voice steady despite the tension surrounding them. "I witnessed their power firsthand. Had they wished to conquer or destroy us, none of us would be alive to debate their intentions." He activated a holographic projector, displaying 3-dimensional footage of Vakar's transformation cities rising from ruins, medical facilities treating former enemies side by side, schools filled with both Tak-Tak and Morlach children, fields of crops thriving where barren wastelands once stretched. Commander Zex watched with contempt. Fabrications. Clever manipulations to deceive the weak-minded. Arya tapped the projector again. Multiple communication links opened simultaneously, floating in the air around them dozens of real-time conversations with ordinary Tak-Tak citizens across Vakar, including former Morlach soldiers now integrated into the new society. Speak to them yourself, Arya offered. Ask them anything. These are not recordings. Zex stepped forward, suspicion evident in his movements. Convenient performances. It was then that Commander Vrex made an unexpected move. He knelt before Zex, lowering his head and exposing his neck in the traditional Morlach gesture of vulnerability position from which he could be easily killed. "I believed as you do," Vrex said, his voice carrying the weight of sincerity. That surrender meant subjugation, that aliens could only be conquerors. "I was wrong, Zex. In this final battle that cannot be won, our people have suffered enough." The gesture visibly shook Zex's certainty. In Morlach culture, such vulnerability was only offered when absolute truth was being spoken, as the speaker's life became forfeit if they spoke falsely. Major Burns seized the moment, activating a final holographic display. The image of Warlord Krex himself appeared before them, recorded in his rehabilitation facility on Vakar. The former warlord looked directly at his cousin. "Zex, my bloodkin, I ordered you to maintain our legacy on Kairos as a final line of defense, but there is nothing left to defend against. The war we fought for 50 years ended in hours because it was always unnecessary. Return with honor." Complex emotions crossed Zex's features: disbelief, rage, confusion, and finally, exhaustion. The internal struggle of a warrior confronting the possibility that his entire cause had become obsolete played out in his expression. "If what you show is true," Zex said, his voice losing its edge of fanaticism, "if our people truly thrive under this arrangement, what becomes of us, of our beliefs, of our independence?" Major Burns stepped forward. "The United Earth Defense Force will begin withdrawal from direct governance of Vakar within 18 months. We'll maintain advisory and support roles only at the request of the fully independent Tak-Tak government. Your people's future will be decided by your people alone." Zex studied Burns's face, searching for deception and finding none. "I require proof beyond images and words. I will send observers 50 of my most trusted soul Deersto, verify these claims directly." "Agreed," Burns replied without hesitation. "In return, you suspend all hostile actions and consider reintegration based on their reports." The two leaders clasped forearms in the formal gesture that sealed agreements among Tak-Tak warriors. Arya watched this unexpected breakthrough, realizing that the path to peace wouldn't come through force of arms or even technological superiority, but through truth established and trust earned. As they prepared to return to the Concordia, Arya gazed up at the distant blue-green sphere of Vakar. For the first time since leaving his homeworld, he allowed himself to truly believe that both Tak-Tak and Morlach might find their way forward together, with humans not as conquerors or saviors, but as guides who understood all too well the cost of prolonged conflict. "What happens now?" Arya asked Major Burns as they boarded their transport. "Now comes the harder part," Burns replied. "Building peace takes more patience than winning wars, especially wars that lasted 50 years. Behind them, Commander Zex watched their departure, standing tall against the lunar horizon, a leader facing the most difficult challenge of his military career, accepting that the fight he had dedicated his life to might have been unnecessary all along.